Well, this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show, Gary's back, so we've got lots to catch up on. We'll be talking about the Surface event last week, the Microsoft event. They talked about new version of Windows, what the new version or the features are in the update for Windows. It's quite confusing. We'll explain it all. We'll be talking about the new Surface devices and something new over there coming soon. We'll be talking smart home presence, Panos Panay potentially going to Amazon, and Gary's got some updates on some of their devices. We've got the changing rules about EVs as well. We'll be talking about that and lots more. So let's get straight to Gary. Gary, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes, and welcome back.
Yeah, apologies for last week. That was a bit chaotic last week, but I'm glad you managed to get a show out, and it was a very good one too.
Yeah, we managed to get a show out. But I'm very glad to see you back. I think Richard's still, I know Richard's still on his travels this week, so hopefully we'll be able to see him soon. He'll be back soon here next week. It's been quite interesting the last few weeks. Quite a few bits and pieces to talk about tonight, actually. We had the Microsoft event, good and bad from that. We've had the 23H2 update, kind of. The 2023 update is coming. What's the difference? It's still a bit confusing. We'll have something on that from Microsoft today as well, and there's some a bit EV news I want to catch up at the end. So, first of all, I want to talk about the Microsoft event that happened last Thursday. They didn't really. I don't think they were going to live. I'm not sure they even did live stream it. It's on YouTube, available on, but I'm not sure they actually live streamed it. But it was quite an interesting event. It was billed as sort of talking about the next version of Windows and devices, but I'm not really sure there was that much information. Well, I know there wasn't that much information, and from seeing on Twitter, there was a lot of people sort of saying this is probably the worst Microsoft hardware event for some time. But there's probably a good reason for that. Is because the king of Microsoft hardware, Panos Panay, and he's pumped for all his for his devices, has left Microsoft.
Yeah, and apparently heading towards Amazon. So that's interesting. Which is not actually a total surprise to me, because the guy who's been leading Amazon's devices for quite some time is leaving and is retiring this year. So they needed someone new, and Panos would seem to fit that bill. And he'd be very pumped about what Amazon been announcing the last few weeks, because I have to say, from what I've seen, I mean, I didn't actually watch the Microsoft event because I just saw the summary, which was like, so someone summarised it, this is this, meh. It's like, it was like, just nothing really exciting there. But the Amazon event was pretty exciting, actually, some of the stuff they announced. I mean, a specific smart home controller, the hub, sort of like a Echo Show without some of the Echo Show features, but designed for smart home. They announced a new Echo Show, which has a really nice feature, which is proximity awareness. So basically, the closer to the screen you are, the more information dense the screen gets, and the further away, the less information dense it gets. So when you're from a distance, you see sort of big text and just one thing, and as you get closer to it, it gives you more and more detail. I mean, they started this a little bit with the Echo Show 10, where they've got that the mode which pops up when it recognises you and does it. This doesn't quite go that far. It's not personal linkage, but it will give that sort of more detailed information as you get closer, which I think is really clever. The sort of thing. And the other thing they spoke about and talked through what it could do is the new they call it artificial intelligence, I'll call it machine learning based approach they're going with, which is large language model, but their own specific AI effectively targeted for Alexa, which will be way more in advance than what it can currently do. They gave the example is that if you add a switch and if you add sensors and a light to your room, it can then detect when people automatically look at your patterns of usage and turn the lights on and off when you need them on and off, stuff like that. Some really, and also you'd have to have much more intelligent conversations with it as well. It'd be conversational rather than the sort of semi-conversational it is now. So maybe the big boost that Amazon needs. The one negative thing out of this, I think, is that they were fairly clearly stated that at some point in the future we're going to have to start charging for Alexa services. So that's negative, and they're already talking about ads on Prime TV, which so your Prime Video, you're going to have to pay an extra sub if you don't want ads in your Prime Video. Which they were justified by saying the Prime Video is a freebie part of the, from their quote in quotes, freebie part of the Prime Amazon Prime service, and Amazon Prime's really these are all add-ons to the basic Amazon Prime service, which is the overnight delivery stuff. But equally, I mean, you can see that this stuff is expensive. Hosting this stuff is really expensive, and somehow they got to get money back on it, and they don't make money on the devices. Most of the devices are loss leaders anyway. If they were selling the devices for the cost plus the on cost, you'd be talking maybe thousands of pounds for an Amazon device rather than for sort of £20-30. So there's got to be some fee. I mean, and they're not getting the money back in the way they thought they were going to get the money back, which is through increasing sales on Amazon. That was the kind of idea that people would buy things with their voice, which really doesn't happen that much. So yeah, I think that's the one sadness that sort of coming out, and obviously also with Amazon being Amazon, a lot of this stuff's only come to the US first. Although they did mention UK quite a lot on their list of target markets, so hopefully we'll get quite a few things like that. I mean, I still find it really frustrating that the skills are split between US and UK, and because it's like I've got this. I don't know if you see this now, but this look. Which is a Toyo doorbell, really neat, really cool, works really well with their app. Has Amazon integration in the States, not over here. So it's just it's frustrating. I mean, that has to be about the cheapest doorbell you could possibly run. Yeah, this is on the dreaded Temu app, which some people like, some people don't, but that was, I think, works out about £3.50 plus postage.
Wow.
For that. So yeah, it's. It works. I mean, it's got a very long battery life on it, because it just only works when you ring the bell. It's not one of these ones with proximity sensor or anything like that. But what is interesting is it actually does have a stream on it, which you can see on something like on Blue Iris or one of these things which has IP support when the button's pressed. So you could use it that way. But at the moment, obviously, it would be nice if it actually worked on Alexa directly. But yeah, that was a complete aside. But I think, overall, what I can see, the Amazon announcements were far more exciting than the Microsoft announcements on devices.
And I think that's probably why Panos has wanted to get a new challenge, because the Surface brand used to be about sort of pushing the PC form factors, and we had the 2-in-1s with the original Surface RTs, and then the Surface Pro, which has been brilliant. The Surface Laptop Studio, the Surface Studio, Surface Go. We've had all these different ones. We've had the Neo almost, and the Duo, and it was about those changing, pushing the PC form factor. But then when you go off what was announced this week, and I've got the page here. So we got, aside from the Windows stuff, which we'll come back to, we got the Surface Laptop Go 3. Which the Laptop Go is a really nice device. That's what I bought from my wife last year, and she absolutely loves it. She uses it all the time. But this new one is they've upped the specs of them, but it's still using last year's processor, and it's not cheap either. So I think it's a 12th gen processor, starting $1,000. So it's I'll bring the UK price up, but yeah, it's not cheap. They announced the Laptop Studio 2, which I'm using the Laptop Studio now, which again is a great device, but it's only a hardware refresh, but that's got a 13th gen processor on it. That's not cheap either. We can get the English version of it, the English price. Oh, no, we can't. And they announced they didn't really announce it properly. They kept it, they released the Surface Go 4 for business, which only for business, which is really strange. I thought the Surface Go was the best selling of the Surface brand because it's a low price one.
Yeah, and consumer targeted. Yeah.
So what they've done is they've released the Surface Go only for business channel, which it just seems really strange. So they're targeting frontline workers. It's got the N200 processor in it now. Aside from that, it's a spec, but they've dropped the the one with the SIM card, the data one, so the 5G one or 4G one. The 4G was the Surface Go 3. So actually, what they're doing, if you go on the consumer site, you can still buy the Go 3 for the same price, or more or less, as the Go 4, which is really. I'm surprised, and I've spoken to a number of people who said I was going to pre-order the Go 4 as soon as it was announced. So I've got my original Go here, which is bits of the screen don't work and the keyboard doesn't work. So I was ready to order one, but you can't order them from the website. But it turns out you can, because you can go through the I don't know, I'll get the UK page here. You can get the Surface Go 4 or the business one via the consumer website. Eventually you end up going around the link, so they don't advertise it. So if you go onto the UK site, you let me just look. So if you go on the consumer site to buy a Surface, you won't see them anything on the Surface Go 4. You'll see all the other new ones, but you won't see the Surface Go 4. You see the Surface Go 3. But why would you want that when the Surface Go 4 is out? But if you go to the business site, the Surface for Business, and you can end up back round you can find the Surface Go 4. And of course, they want you to buy it through so you have to go for where to buy. You buy it through a reseller. But of course, one of the resellers happens to be Microsoft. So yeah, so you can end up. Oh, they've expanded this. When I went on this last week, there was less on there. Yeah, one of them is Microsoft, and you can order it from Microsoft. So that is what I've got here. So here is a Surface Go 4, which I got from Microsoft. But I just had to go around the houses to get it, which is just a weird. It's a weird. You just go through there and you can order it through there. So, but why do it that way? It should, why not make it available on the consumer site? My only thought is it's to do with support, because if you buy it from the consumer site, there's a consumer support model in place. If you buy it from the business one, and you buy it from PC World or from Currys, then it's they're the first point of contact for support, aren't they? But if you buy it from Microsoft Business one, maybe they have their own. I don't know. It just seems a bit of a strange way of doing it. They don't actually sell it to consumers. But when I thought that the Surface Go 4 was a big seller, and the people I spoke to also thought the same thing. So I don't know. It just seems a bit strange to me.
Yeah, very.
But like I said, I've got one, so I'll be doing a review of it, because I use this all the time for meetings. So I'm probably I'm using it in the business capacity, even though I'm getting it for myself. I do prefer to take this into meetings than my regular work laptop, unless I'm doing something specific. So yeah, so I'm going to carry on it. So obviously I don't need the keyboard. I've got the keyboard. I did lose my pen at Heathrow Airport, unfortunately, but I've got another one. So so I'll find out next week how I get on with the Surface Go 4 and how it compares with the original one, which I said it's been a long while. So that was a bit weird. So you can see why Panos was frustrated. That's all they talked about. So there was nothing, no new form factors. There was no ARM devices. It was just Intel refreshes. So I think we speculated, didn't we, with Richard, that if they don't talk about ARM devices, then maybe that's done. So maybe that is done. It wasn't expecting them to announce the Surface Pro or anything like that, or the laptop, because they were announced earlier in the year. So that makes sense. But yeah, it's just a strange. I think they announced one of those big things. Those what they call the Surface Hubs.
Studio.
Surface Hub 3.
Oh, the hubs. Yeah.
But it's all spec bumps. So yeah, the great devices. As we've said in the past, you pay a premium for them, but where's the Neo? Where's the Duo 3? Where's the wearable? I expect that's what Surface was about, and I think that's probably what has caused the frustration. So very lackluster. I think people said it was probably the worst Microsoft hardware event for some time, perhaps for that reason. I mean, they didn't even show the Go 4 on stage at all. They never even talked about it. So what they did announce was CoPilot, but it's not Windows CoPilot anymore, is it? It's now CoPilot in Windows.
Yeah. Well, I guess that kind of makes more sense because, as Richard's pointed out, it's not really a Copilot for Windows. It's been chatted in Windows, so
yeah.
I guess that naming actually makes more sense. But yeah,
they announced quite a few AI features. Paint. I actually did a video of this. Paint actually got some new features now. You can do background removal, and you can do layers as well. So you can get a picture of yourself, take it out of the background, put your picture somewhere else. It's quite handy for doing like YouTube thumbnail type videos and things like that. The snipping tool can read some context on text, and I think the photos has got some blur as well. So they announced that. But what they announced is the update. I don't think they've got it on here. The update to Windows 11. It's got really confusing. So they've announced a new Windows update, which includes the CoPilot and the new File Explorer and some other stuff. But it's not the 23H2 update. It's a feature update. So so there's my screen. Now you see this is a release preview machine, and I've got the new File Explorer and I've got CoPilot in there. But this is still running build 22H2. So I did my video on what's coming next based off the beta channel, which is 23H2, and expecting that to they're expecting that to be the thing. But what they've done is they've taken the features that are in 23H2 and pushed them to 22H2, supposedly starting this week. And this is in release preview, so this came to release preview last week, and there you go. I can see it now. So that this is the new build. It's not a build; it's a feature update. The 23H2 they've just pushed to release preview. My machine's not picked it up yet as an optional update, which only has about 3 or 4 features that aren't tied to this other update. So what we've got now is you've got the 22H2 with these new features which are coming, and then you've got 23H2 in release preview, which will be coming later in the year as a build. So maybe next month it'll come as a build. So the 2023 update, which has the new File Explorer and CoPilot, isn't a build change. It's just a feature patch. So
I'm confused. I'm sure Richard would be really confused.
Yeah. so what they've done basically, they've taken all the new features out of the 23H2 update and just shoved them out. Or shoving them out, I should say. Probably more elegant way of describing it, but that's what they're doing. They're pushing these features out as a part of the monthly update, and then probably next month they'll push the 23H2, which is a new build. So they split them out completely, and I guess what you've got there is the core platform underneath, and then the features on top. And they, rather than releasing one update, they split them. And some people, perhaps maybe cynically, have been saying the reason that they're doing this is so that businesses often put off a build update, certainly a half-year update, so these features wouldn't get rolled out. So they push them out through the monthly update, so you can't stop them because you can't stop the monthly updates. Well, you can hold them, can't you, through update services, but they still get, you've got to release them at some point. So maybe that's why they've done it that way, but who knows? But yeah, it gets very confusing. So all the nice new stuff that we've been testing in 23H2 is coming to 22H2, and 23H2 is coming, and it's got 3 or 4 things in it, but it's, I guess, under the hood stuff. And then what that means then, because for 24H2 next year, who knows? Maybe that'll be Windows 12. Who knows? Things have not been clear. They've not explained why they're doing it this way. It surprised, I think, most people really, because I think everybody kind of did the post. But anyway, so there you go. So it's supposed to be restarting release today, but I guess it's the next patch Tuesday. We'll start bringing which will be not next week, the week after on it, something like that. That'll be the time when you start to go things. So you'll get the new CoPilot and you'll get the new File Explorer, which are good. You've got the gallery in there and some other stuff. There's a lot of nice new changes in this, but it's just a bit confusing. So I'm sure Richard will be even more frustrated than he is normally, but it is a bit confusing. Because in the meantime, we have had dev channel builds, but without any particular features in them as well. So it's all got a bit confusing. If you're on release preview, you get new features. This is what you'll get when you roll out. It's definitely a good update. The nice apart the CoPilot's a bit lackluster, and like we've talked about, you can turn on dark mode on or take a screenshot. That's about it, and the rest of it's just being chat. But file explorer and everything else is good. Oh, the sound I could show it on here, but the sound you've got the volume mixer in the quick access now, which is good as well. So there you go. So it's been an interesting week for Microsoft. I think they've took a bit of a battering in the tech press, really, with the lackluster event, and you can see why someone like Panos, who's about innovation, would look elsewhere, because you want that. But it's equally, it's not as like you said, it's not as quite as even as Rosie's just jumping across to Amazon and bringing a load of new devices out, because they've had their battering, haven't they, on the hardware division for some time as well. So recently.
Although they are still innovating. I mean, some of the stuff they're talking about. I mean, I mentioned a bit earlier, but there's a couple of other things that they announced. So, if you get one of the new tablets, the 11 Max, I think it is, they've introduced this thing called eye gaze mode, which is really good for people who've got difficulties, impairments, so if they've got speech impairments or touches, they can't use touch screens. And sort of someone like my mum who has a little bit of shake in her hands and finds using a tablet very difficult would find this really useful. But basically, you just stare at the tablet to operate it. So it uses eye tracking to work out where you're looking at, and it's very similar, I guess, to the way that Apple control works for the VR set they announced, like the mixed reality set they announced, and I think that's really cool. And the other one, which I really like the idea of, because I've got family around the world, is call translation. So real-time call translation as you're having a conversation with someone in a different language. And that one is coming to the UK, so that's good to see.
So there's a 10 languages quite a while ago, didn't they?
Yeah. But actually building it into Alexa makes a lot of sense, because that's the thing a lot of people, families use to chat, and it'll be really, really good to see that. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see if some of the more esoteric languages people I deal with actually come along. They say there'll be 10 languages at launch, so we'll have to see what languages actually come on that. But it's good. It's good to see some of the stuff, innovation coming in. Obviously, the one I was initially particularly excited about is the new Echo Hub, which is basically a wall-mountable smart home control panel. Because one of the things I just don't wish they hadn't just done it as a separate device. I wish they just built this into the normal Echo shows. But it basically allows you to have a configurable touch dashboard. So basically, you can get all your smart things and configure them how you want, and view camera feeds and things like that. And it will work quite nicely for that. And it says they can use PoE to power it as well. I'm not quite sure exactly how that would happen. But apparently it's very quick, and it also includes Matter support as well, which virtually all Echo devices doing that. But it really is just an Echo show with a specific front end on it, which is kind of I tend to think, well, why didn't they do that as just something you could do on your Echo Show 10 or your one of the devices you've already got? But then again, you wouldn't buy a new device if that was the case. So maybe that's what they do.
Yeah.
And it does look nice. I have to say, it's quite thin and quite attractive. So yeah, and good. And the other things they did announce, which would probably interesting to our audience, is the new Fire TV sticks. So these are always incremental upgrades, but so they got the second generation stick 4K and the second generation stick 4K Max. So the stick 4K Max supports Wi-Fi 6E, which if you've got a 6E router is pretty impressive on latency. And also it will have the new Ambient Experience, which at the moment it's free. I can kind of see this is something they might want to change for, but this is like kind of like the the art, the Samsung had that art TV, which basically could show pictures. It gives you the option to do that on any TV. And I know we used to have this on Media Center where we could show photos, and there were nice apps which could do it. But that sort of thing's been missing for a while. But yeah, so it has got some nice features. The key thing about both of these though, is a real bumpy processor speed. A significant bumpy processor speed. So that should improve the experience on both the sticks. I may well upgrade to the 4K Max stick, because I like my 4K Max stick I've got on one of my TVs, but it can be a bit laggy at times. So I think that may be an option. So then they're kind of coming out at a similar price to the current ones are, and obviously I suspect that there'll be discounts. There are already, if you wanted a 4K stick though, there are some significant discounts already on the older versions. So obviously the new ones coming out, so that's always worth a look at.
Yeah. It's actually I've got some interesting stuff from Chinese manufacturers, some smart home stuff around presence that hopefully I should be getting for the next couple of weeks to view, because that's kind of trying to build that model of presence of who's in the house to try and to make the house smarter.
Did I actually talk about the Aqara FP2 I got? Because I can't remember if I mentioned it, but so I got this is actually one of my birthday presents. I got the Aqara FP2 sensor, which is a microwave, wave, milli microwave, I think is it sensor. But basically, it's one of the ones which measures your heart. It looks for heartbeats, and it does do multiple presence in the room, and it is pretty impressive actually. So I've been using it to track my movements in my sleep and see how restful sleep I've been having. And I obviously don't have very restful sleep at all, from what I can see in the track on it. But it actually does do, because it can sort of monitor where your heart is. It can really see your movement around quite well. There's a few things in it I don't find as good as advertised. It doesn't seem to clear the fact you've left the room very quickly. There seems to be a long lag before it actually says, "Oh, you really have gone." So I'm not sure what that is, and it can be disrupted by other movements quite a lot. So if you've got something vibrating, so one of my walls is next door to where the pump is for the heating system, and when that's running, the sensor actually detects that as a person. Other than that, it's really good. Placement's really important, and you can map your room and actually show where things are in your room and track it. I think there's been a lot of really good rave reviews about this. I think there are a few gotchas on it, and the firmware could do a few extras. But if you get it set up right, it can be really good. What I particularly like about it, and I can particularly see a really good use for, is the fall detection. If you mount it on the ceiling, pointing downwards, it can detect if someone falls over. And for elderly care, I think that is exceptionally useful, and can be used. So I'm looking into that more so at the moment. But yeah, I mean, it certainly has some real potential. It's just really expensive what it is. I suspect the sensors you're getting are going to be significantly cheaper.
Yeah. And I think that's one way of doing the lighting is if you know where everybody is. I mean, I've got it set up in here now, so I've got a hue. Oh, you can see the lights just changed, and as I move the sensor. So this is a Hive sensor, and I've got this one set up so when it detects motion, it turns the light to this color, and until somebody leaves. So
yeah,
that's for recording purposes, I need it probably a bit brighter. But so that's the way I use it. It's that it does that until somebody leaves, and that works quite well.
Yeah, I mean, I've just spoken about some of the automations in this smart office of mine, which before the smart studio. But I think some of the automations I'm doing now, I'm particularly pleased with how well they work. I mean, the one which controls my blinds, I think is brilliant. So that uses the azimuth of the sun and the angle of the sun to work out if it's blinding me or not. So if the sun's coming through the window at a low angle, which it is obviously this time of the year, the blinds drop and actually block off the sun, and they do it automatically. And I've had to tweak it a little bit, but it works really well. So suddenly I'm starting to get blind. Oh no, I'm not getting blinded anymore. The blinds have come down and sorted out. And I just need to tweak it so it's a bit more advanced than that. But it's really clever how it does it, because it knows the azimuth, it knows where the angle of the sun is throughout the day, and it can use that to trigger it. And my other absolute favourite, but really simple automation is. I've got automation on both my main bedroom light and a side light in the bedroom. And when you turn the side light on, it automatically turns the main light off. And that's such a simple automation, but it's exactly what you want to have.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's actually really good. Yeah.
And that was so easy to do, and sort of thing which I think most people would find intuitive. So it's quite good. I mean, one of the things I wanted to try with the FP2 was sort of nighttime movement sensing to see. So if someone's in bed and someone gets out of bed, you don't turn all the lights on, because you don't want to dazzle the other person who's left in bed and wake them up. So you want to dim light. But if someone gets out of bed and the last person up, then maybe you do want to turn the lights on so they can move around and get dressed or whatever. So within certain time periods, obviously late in middle of the night, you definitely don't want to turn bright lights on. But if say you're talking about 6:30 in the morning, when one person may be getting up and the other one isn't, and that sort of things you want to do. So and that works quite well because it can detect two heartbeats and work out how many people you've got there. So yeah, definitely some interesting automations are possible with all this stuff. Sensors are actual people sensors rather than proximity sensors I think are really good.
Yeah, that sounds good. And actually, as I was saying before I started recording, I've been doing quite a bit with Power Automate Desktop, and actually now I've figured out how to do that. You can actually link things together with Power Automate Desktop if you can get web versions running on a browser on a PC. You can make things link together, necessarily linked together. So I'm playing around with the one is automatically posting to Twitter without using an API. So I run the routine. It reads the RSS feed from my site. Then it launches Twitter, clicks new post, and types it all in. It's a bit screen scrapey for me, but it does work. But it has got that possibility that you could have a central PC pulling all this together. Even if the systems won't talk to each other, you can have web triggers and then something actually also clicks something off and does it that way. So, and there's a free version of that as well, so you don't need all the premium connectors for it. So it's a quite interesting thing. So I'm gonna have a play around with those. But I think that's the thing. The key now is to try and make things understand where you are, because I think next year when I'm redoing the kitchen, I'm going to put in hue light strips in there and put the presence sense in there, so the lights only come on when someone's in. But I don't, and that's the limitation I've got with this thing at the moment, is if you walk in during the day, it puts the light on.
Yeah, it's smart. It's smart, but it's not intelligent.
No. So what I want it to do is to say, okay, it's dark, and so I know the day, the dark, and I know what it should be. That's how I have the lights on, my other hue lights on in the living room. They only come on when it gets dark, takes 30 minutes and all that kind of stuff, which I talked about before. But so I want to combine that with this presence as well, so that it knows, because I quite often come in here in the evening, I put my watch on charging here rather than on the bed. So I come in for like 2 minutes before I go to bed. So I want it to put light on. But if I come in during the day or I'm working during the day, I don't want the light on unless it's dark. So yeah, so that's the smart, or the intelligence, isn't it, that you can build into it. That's what I want to do. Some other bits and pieces, so as well as the sort of intelligence, I've been doing some programming this last week. This slightly different programming. I've done some synth design programming, and I've been doing quite a bit. As I mentioned a while ago, I've got some free sound sets that you can have for the Korg Mob Wave, which you can get from the Just Lifestyle. And I thought, actually, I do tutorial videos on Windows and I do tutorial videos on other stuff, so why not do it on doing these synths? Because actually a lot of it is you do it through the browser, or through their editor, so the Mod Wave editor. So I combine that. So if you've got a Mod Wave, there's a virtual version as well as a hardware one, and there's a free trial if you just want to play with one. You can follow my video and I'll show you how to get started, because I was when I first got it, I was a bit overwhelmed with it, but now I've done a lot of sounds on it. I think it all sort of clicked into place. So anyway, have a listen to that, because it's or watch that video, because it's quite hopefully should make it easy for beginners to really get into creating some deep sounds on there, and it's a very powerful synth. So yeah, have a look at that. Now, the other thing I want to mention as well is a couple of weeks ago we talked about that there is a potential for the government were getting a bit maybe changing their stance on some of the, is it the net zero, or what's the actual term that they were using for this?
Net zero approach is what they talk. And obviously, from our point of view, we talked a lot about EVs and on this show, and they've sort of kind of moved the goalposts, although kind of haven't. I mean, there's as I've said before on the show, there's a lot of misinformation around some of this stuff anyway. So way back though, there was a deadline of 2035 to get rid of all petrol and diesel cars, including hybrids, and then they moved that back to 2030, but they didn't quite move it back to 2030 because although people have said you have to buy an electric car from 2030 onwards, that actually wasn't the case. Hybrids could still be sold, and they hadn't actually defined what type of hybrid could be sold. It was hybrids with a reasonable range was the quote. So there was no real definition of what that actually meant. So, and if you actually look at what's on sale in the UK market at the moment, virtually every vehicle which is petrol diesel is some form of hybrid. There's very few non-hybrid vehicles out there now sold new. So in terms of actually what was going to happen to the car market in 2030, not a lot was going to happen. People were still going to have all the same cars on sale that they currently got on sale, except for ones which are pure diesel, pure petrol. Although that was obviously, the devil was going to be in the detail, as it always is, because there wasn't any sort of detail about what type of hybrids could be sold at that point. Just a sort of vague, it has to be a reasonable range. And then come 2035, those would have to be stopped selling, and then it would be pure,
right,
zero emission vehicles. So I say that carefully because it's not battery electric. It's necessarily, it could be hydrogen, it could be e-fuels, as long as they're totally zero emission, they could sell them. And it also wasn't a ban on selling petrol and diesel cars. It was a ban on selling new petrol and diesel cars. So you could still buy a second-hand one. You could still run a petrol and diesel car. There wasn't anything stopping you driving a petrol and diesel car from 2030 either. So there's a lot of misinformation about this anyway, in terms of how it's been spent and spun. And the change which has come, the government has now said, I'm not sure the whole government said this, but certainly Richard Sunak has said that they're pushing back the ban to 2035. But what does that actually mean? Because that hasn't really been defined yet as to what they're actually saying about that. Are they going to say from 2035 you can still sell hybrids, or is it a hard cut off at 2035? In which case there's very little change in actual effect by this. It just means the very few petrol and diesel cars which are out there could still be sold. And most manufacturers are moving away from them anyway because people don't want to buy them. People want to buy hybrids because of the range and stuff on them. So there's very few people actually buying pure diesel and pure electric petrol cars these days. So the manufacturers are moving away from that. Also, there is the net zero requirements, which are still in place. These haven't changed, for actually reducing their carbon footprint anyway. So the manufacturers have still got to reduce their carbon footprint, and the only way they're going to reduce their carbon footprint is by selling non-petrol and diesel cars. So they're still incentivized to sell battery electric or hybrids. So there's very little actual. It's one of these things which is a great soundbite if you're trying to target a certain market in terms of people's perceptions, but it actually really means very little unless we see the devil in the detail. As I say, if it is a pushback and saying that from 2035 they can still sell hybrids, then that's quite a big change. But that's not what I'm reading. I think it's from 2035. It's a hard cut, which is the same as the EU. So in some ways, it's just aligning us with what the EU was doing in the first place, which actually makes it a little bit easier for manufacturers. But because, as Ford have pointed out, if they've still got to meet all these targets and yet people are going to be demanding petrol and diesel cars, it makes it harder for them. So in some ways, it's and as they also point out, we're now the only country without incentives to buy non-petrol and diesel cars. All the other countries in Europe are still putting incentives out there for purchase, whereas we pulled back on that. So there's a lot of problems with it. Also, of course, politically, we know that there's likely to be a general election fairly shortly, and it will all change after that potentially. So it could be a vote winner in some places. You know that the car lobby is very strong, and I certainly meet people all the time who are very much anti EV because of the misinformation which is out there, and unfortunately there is an awful lot of misinformation out there. Which is challenging, but realistically, I think it makes very little difference, because if you actually think what the manufacturers are going to do, Britain is a reasonably sized market, but it's not the biggest market out there in the world. EU is the biggest market, well, other than China. And China are already pushing back in terms of they've got their net zero. They're still aiming for that because, actual fact, they need to. So their EVs and things are still pushing very heavily and very subsidised in China. So EU coming up as well. That's a big market. Unless they push back, I think we're going to find that this has very limited effect on actually what happens in the market. I think, it's a good soundbite.
It's about So it's more about soundbites than policies. It's to appease a demographic of the voters, I guess.
And it's obviously, if you look at the politics, that makes some sense in terms of way some votes have gone recently. But what is interesting is that the thing which actually probably more significant change is the boilers and the changes to heat pump legislation which come in. But what was really significant in this change, and the one which was snuck in, is they removed the onus on landlords to go more energy efficient, which is going to cost landlords a lot of money. Which politics you can see around that as well. But one thing which has come in, and one positive thing, is they've actually increased the grant for heat pump changing. So it's nice to see some carrot in there. But I'd like to see a few more carrots. We tend to do a lot of sticks in this country without carrots, and nobody wants to fund carrots. We need a few more carrots. I mean, I've often said that if our aim is to reduce air pollution, and we keep putting speed limits in to actually reduce pollutants, then maybe we should look at whether if a vehicle doesn't emit pollution at a certain speed, it should be allowed to go faster. And they've done that in certain countries. Austria did this, and actually one of the biggest boosts on sale of low emission vehicles. Now there's whole bits around tyre pollution and stuff, which has to be addressed as well when you do that. But generally, it's still beneficial if you're talking about the CO2 levels and their quality in that respect. And in Austria, they actually allowed EVs to go at a high speed limit in one of the lanes of the motorways than the others. And if you think about how people think in this country,
that's definitely
go faster. You're going to get everybody's going to be starting to buy. So I think that there are other incentives. I say that I know there's some people out there who really object to that idea because of other pollutants that can be done, like tire pollution and stuff. And we do need to work on that. That's actually, in terms of our health, microplastics and the micro bits of rubber are probably not very good for us. But there's certainly most EVs emit less, about the same as the average vehicle, because we're buying big heavy vehicles anyway. But people are tending to buy big SUVs rather than small cars these days. So that's the trade-off. But it's I'd say it's soundbites. That's basically the way I'm viewing it. I think it's we're going back to where we were 10 years ago, or in our probably 5 years ago, in terms of what we were planning to do for net zero, which was to do 2035 cut off. Most of the manufacturers, I mean, you can't turn the chips around now, but all the manufacturers have been aiming for 2030. They're all going to be coming out of EV models. EV models are getting better and better. If you look at some of the stuff which has just been released, Peugeot's new 2008 with a 475-mile range, and Stellantis, which is the parent group of Peugeot, this is their new architecture they're pushing out for all their vehicles. And up to now, Stellantis had some really nice cheap EVs, but the range has been poor on them. If they're now able to produce EVs with this sort of range, at the sort of prices they were previously looking, then the market changes again. So, and we know it's going to happen. We know battery technology is changing all the time. It's getting better. I mean, it's like you look at the standard batteries, no rare metals in them. None of this case of cobalt or lithium or that stuff. So it goes against a lot of the arguments which are out there. But yeah, it's interesting. All this stuff is always interesting, and you can argue some of the science both ways, but generally, I think. I mean, I would buy an EV even now, even without the green credentials, because I just love the performance.
Yeah, you prefer, yeah.
I prefer the driving experience, and I know some people don't find them soulless because they don't get the noise. I kind of get that. I mean, the visceral noise is something, but then again, if you look at what limousine manufacturers have been doing for the last 100 years, the whole aim of limousines and that driving experience has been to make them quieter and more peaceful, and a lot of people like that as well. So it's an interesting trade-off, and you can always make EVs noisy. Some of the EVs make some fantastic noises.
Yeah, I actually quite like that sci-fi kind of sound some of them make.
Yeah, so yeah, it's an interesting trade-off, but we will see what actually happens, because obviously this could change again within a year.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, so really the message is just continue with your own plans, whatever you were planning to do, one way or the other, you just continue, and you should be fine. Yeah.
If you want to buy, I mean, most people who buy cars keep them for a significant amount of time. So buy it 20. If you're desperately going to want to buy a petrol and diesel car, buy it 2029 anyway, and keep it that. But I'd encourage you not to.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting. A lot of things are going to ebb and flow, I think, in the next year or so, aren't they? Until these things settle down one way or the other, and then we get a period of so-called stability. Although I don't remember having that for the last few years, but never mind. We should do. We should get there. But yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? That the misinformation that gets supplied, and that is something that's been around for a long while. Well, hopefully next week I should be able to talk about this device then that I've got here. See that? Notice that this is no shiny packaging on this. So this no nice box or anything like that, because this is the business version of it, which gets the boring cardboard packaging. So
well, that saves the money, I guess.
Yes. I think I hope they pass that on. Hopefully we should have Richard back with us next week as well. I've just checked on the latest on the feature update, which they haven't really given a proper name, I don't think. I'm calling it the 2023 update. So it could be called Moment 4, I suppose, as well. But they've, in a blog this a couple of hours ago, they're calling it the most personal Windows experience begins rolling out today. And they don't actually say 23H2 or 2023 update. That's what they're framing it as. But that's the one with CoPilot in, the new file manager, the new cloud Windows backup, and so on. So you will get that, as Microsoft say that they're rolling that out through their control feature rollout. So basically you need to have 22H2 and you'll get the update at some point. I've just checked my machine. I have got an update pending, so maybe that's it, or that could just be a security update. But what you have got to do is you've got to switch on the setting, get updates as soon as they're available. I think which that means you get the like 2 weeks early, don't you, from the normal release schedule. So you'll start to get that. If you haven't done that, I think you'll get them in November. Is the patch Tuesday in November, so you've got a month probably as an optional, and then you'll get them anyway. So there you go. So so you're going to get, if you're on 23H20, if you're on 22H2, you're going to get these updates. You can either get them now or you can wait till next month and they'll get pushed down to you. So there you go. That's the definitive for now.
The Definitive until it's changed, yeah.
Yeah, until things change. But anyway, like I said, I like the update, so it's definitely worth it. And it's not like you've got to install a 4 gig update. It's lost that excitement though, hasn't it? Though we used to all the new updates coming, what's Threshold 2 and Redstone, and whether there was a big build up to that release date. But yeah, those days have gone now, and we're on these kind of incremental updates, which I think, apart from us who like shiny new things, it's probably better for end users.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think that's everything for this week. We should be back same time, same place next week. And we've got Synthfest coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So I think it's the 8th of October. So I'll be going on to that. But we'll be back here. I'll have the Surface Go to talk about, and hopefully Rich will be back as well. So, Garry, where can we find you?
You can find me at Garry WMA on all social media platforms for now. Until Twitter starts charging its fee, and then I might drop off that one.
Yes. Now I've got my integration working now. Until they start charging, then I'll be going on that one. Although they've said that's not necessarily going to do that. I'm at Alex Dixon, but you can find me on slashstyle.com, and our YouTube channel is on there as well. So we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Excellent. Good. It was good to get back. So so there you go. So I'm going to update my post now. Now we know when that's going out. Right. Great. Well, I'll speak to you next week.
Yep. You take care. Speak to you soon.
Right. See you. Bye.
Bye. Bye.